Okay, this is a continuation of my updated political editorial, or you want to call it speech. Editorial, it's not really a speech, just an editorial. First point I'd like to make is I'd go back over some of the things I said before that have to do with things that I think aren't being brought out in the debate right now. I'm not brought out by the major media. I mean, obviously everybody knows the media is controlled by conglomerates, and they're all in the 1%. The conglomerates are all in bed with either in bed with 1% or part of the 1%, one or the other. Big conglomerates own all the media. I mean, the via communists and everybody else. So that you don't, just like communist Russia, where you have, the state TV, which has a bias and only tells people what they want to hear, it tells half-truths and half-lies, so on. And the same thing we got here, it's pretty much the same thing as Radio Moscow, it's Bestia, Pravda, all in one with the conglomerate media, and that's why Al Gore put the internet in, which gave us YouTube, really. You got to give Al Gore a lot of credit because he knew that the conglomerate-owned media was a problem, and Bill Clinton is the one that signed the bill and gave the media to the 1%. The purpose of the Democrat Party is to protect the First Amendment. When you look at the Founding Fathers, why have a Democrat Party? If it's broke, fix it, and they're supposed to protect things that go wrong with the country, and if you lose the First Amendment, you don't have, like I said on the other speech, like Dan Rather said, you don't have the you don't have democracy. It's a vital organ in democracy, the First Amendment and the media. And so basically Bill Clinton really didn't do his job as a Democrat. Not only was willfully, he wasn't just careless, he was willfully bad. And so that's another reason not to vote for Hillary. The other thing I was going to say, the other thing I don't think has been brought out too very well is with the capitalist system. I don't think Sanders would answer the question. He calls himself a socialist. But how much of his socialist policies, right now, my argument is that we basically are destroying the capitalist system with the corruption. You don't have capitalism with corruption. So if you create a socialist system, you have it really essentially more capitalist than it is right now. And Sanders has not really brought out exactly what is going to change to make socialist and all the basic principles of capitalism, why they worked for us in the 50s, and would he really change enough that they wouldn't work for us now? But with the corruption, if you got rid of the corruption alone, you would have capitalism again. And I doubt if he's going to make anything so socialist. And most of his programs are, someone brought out recently in one of these, I don't remember who they were, but that actually all of these things have been done under FDR. And that's why, and you had capitalism under FDR, and he set the groundwork, I think, for the big boom we had and this high standard of living we had in the late 50s. It was probably set by FDR, so you had a lot of capitalism at work. So Bernie Sanders' programs aren't really that socialist. Probably not, but someone needs to ask some of these people that are talking under Bernie Sanders and have them explain that. And what I'm basically talking about is basically my theory, which we used to have the two tallest buildings in the world. And, the World Trade Center and the Empire State Building. Well, now you notice the tallest building in the world is in the United Arab Emirates. Well, you look at that, why that is. And when you say, well, it has to do with ratio of imports and exports. I mean, because the United Arab Emirates has a very valuable export, and it's one that's a necessity. It's one that everybody needs. And basically you have a whole, it's like if you had a house and you have discover oil in the backyard as the kind of oil you could sell, and your heating bill is $20 a month, you're probably going to make a lot of money. I think it's the same way with imports and exports. You export a whole lot, you don't import much, you're going to have a lot of wealth in the country. And my whole argument really, if you have enough oil in the country, you can run this country in a lousy way and still have a lot of wealth. But there's other variables that work that way too, and one of them is technological advancement. But it has to do with ratio of imports and exports. And if you have a whole lot of, if you have the way you compete on the international market, the way I've understood with the capitalist system and why it works, has to do with realistic prices, and technological advancement, both those things, and the competition is what is a catalyst for technological advancement. And so that's why we stayed ahead. And basically, FDR set the groundwork for why we stayed ahead of Russia so far with the nuclear weapons. Like I say, everything they got, they stole from us, and they didn't know what they're doing after they stole it from us. The Chinese have never built a 707 or anything like it, as far as I know, because their company doesn't inspire technological advancement. Well, the capitalist system inspires it because of competition, and the corruption stops the competition. They're making laws that stop the competition, and that includes, especially with the AMA, where you have hospital mergers, they stop them. With the drug companies, you have trademark copyrights on drugs. You won't let people sell non-traditional drug treatments. They go in, they stop, use the government with their campaign money and stop them, and they won't let us go to Canada to buy drugs. So my argument is that if you go to Canada to buy drugs, then you have a realistic price. They got to get their prices down to compete with Canadian drugs. And so they have, they also have incentive for technological advancement. They have to compete with Canada, and when you get rid of the copyrights, everything else, and then or even say, let's say Bernie Sanders' socialism created a drug company that's government owned. That's still, you still have a capitalist system essentially, because you'd have more competition. They'd have to compete with the government owned industry. Or if you create a government-owned hospital, so essentially you still have capitalism, and that's what Sanders and that Mike Figueroa. That's one question I'd like to hear. How could you integrate his socialism? You still have a capitalist system, even with some socialism, and that's what FDR did essentially. And break up the hospitals. Maybe that'd work too. I don't know. Like he wants to break up the banks. You break up the hospitals. All these hospital mergers. 2 hospitals in town, and you have incentive for technological advancement. You're stronger in the international market. You have lower prices, and there's incentive for technological advancement. Like I say, if you're the only country in the world that has a certain drug that cures cancer, everybody will be buying from you. But what I say it's an economic cycle. Like say we're a blender, where you have a blender and you have the same electric motor and the same amount of electricity coming through, but you get more work done with a blender. You put it in the center because you have centrifugal force, and this builds momentum, there's acceleration, there's catalyst. In other words, x cubed or x squared, whatever. And the more catalyst you have, the more acceleration. We have a lot of catalysts too. If you have lower prices, that's one catalyst. You have money for technological advance to bring more money in, that's another catalyst. You have incentive for technological advancement, and you have more incentive for it. You bring a little money in with that, you have more money, the technological advancement, and you have more incentive for it. So you have 3 catalysts right there. One would be technological advancement, the incentive for it, and the actual technological advancement, and the lower prices, the competitive prices. So all 3 would be catalysts for what I'd call an economic tornado. And what I'm saying, the corruption stops all these things. So essentially, you talk about having the biggest building in the world, the tallest building, the country that has the most wealth, and that's how you increase wealth. And so that means the top all the way to the bottom would be profiting. I mean, Warren Buffett would be profiting, for one thing. If you have consumer confidence, nobody's spending that much money on drugs. Even drug companies have more money. They get them from external countries, external sources. And so you have more consumer confidence, and all these companies, and that means Detroit too, more people buying cars. And if Warren Buffett's investing, wouldn't he have more money totally? If there's more money totally in the country, you're going to have all the way to top to bottom. And what I'm trying to say is that the trade unions essentially help the working class, the bottom 50%. But they also help the top 49% in that way. If there's more wealth in the country, and even some of the 1%, and the only people that are profiting from corruption, there's just a very, very few, and they aren't necessarily the richest. They're just a bunch of people in there that are screwing everything up, and they probably wouldn't make as much money. But Sanders needs to win. People need to vote for Sanders, but someone needs to ask Hillary to explain everything I just said, and ask the question, if whether I'm right or not, whether Warren Buffett would profit from Bernie Sanders' ideals and getting rid of corruption, and see if she can answer it. And I'll bet she can't. I bet she doesn't even know anything about it. She doesn't understand corruption at all, from everything I've seen. She doesn't know how to stop it. She doesn't know why we need to stop it. She just doesn't understand it. It's out of her intellectual range. That's why Bernie Sanders, I say, he's a Jewish person, and Einstein was Jewish, and these people are pretty smart. Like my dad even went to school with him and said they were the smartest people. My dad was the top 20%, 29 out of 1,000 in his class, and most people that beat him were Jewish. And so, and you know they're smart. And Hillary, I can't see that Hillary's anywhere near as smart as Sanders. And people haven't brought this out. And it takes a real bright man like Sanders, you know, and Trump's not that good either, I don't think. He's a little better than Hillary. But people need to be bringing this out. And the other thing I was going to say, let's see, I made my case on that. I was also going to talk about, the fight in Vegas. There was a big, riot in Las Vegas. And some of these people that were talking, they're the Sanders supporters that are trying to get the word out through YouTube, and I don't remember what they are. There's the Young Turks, and then there's the Figurado, and then there's this girl, Sing Progressive or something. And they're worrying that all this bad publicity is going to make Sanders look bad as supporters. Really, there's just, if they're loud and yelling, they need to keep booing. They need to keep booing louder because, first place, it's legal. I didn't see any chairs being thrown or anything. I didn't really see much illegal conduct. There were police standing there. I didn't see them arrest anybody. So they need to keep, and like I say, most of the people that watch this are going to wonder why they're rebelling, and they're going to watch YouTube and find out exactly where this corruption is in the Democratic Party and why Deb Wasserman Schultz, or whatever her name is, where exactly is her conflict of interest? So she's getting some kind of a perk from corporate America, from environmentalists, the trial lawyers, some organization, I don't know who. Someone's giving her money. They're giving her something, sexual favors, I don't know what. Someone needs to find out exactly what it is and get that out. There is some kind of a conflict of interest. And the more people rebel, the louder they yell. Every man, woman, and child is going to know what's going on. So the rebellion is important. And another reason that Sanders stood up for them, for their yelling and their booing, and the reason they need to yell and boo, I always use the example that I learned about communist Russia, and communist Russia broke up. It's not as communist as it used to be anyway. I mean, there's still trouble. Yeah, the leaders are still a problem, but back, in the days of Khrushchev, and before this, with the Bolshevik Party, Lenin, Stalin, Trotsky, the days of that, I mean, the Bolshevik Party, the Bolsheviks and Mensheviks, the Bolsheviks put on a puppet show and made fun of the Mensheviks, I guess, and made fun of the Bolsheviks. Well, someone out in the crowd shot everybody that laughed. They were laughing at them. Someone out in the crowd shot everybody that laughed. So that's how the Bolsheviks got their power. There's fear, really. And like Sanders made a good point tonight in his speech. He said, as a president, you can't do much. But in any dictatorship, who has more power, really? It's like a sleeping lion, the people. But the thing that kept the Bolsheviks in power was the fact that everyone shut up. That was the fact that everyone was afraid to talk because they were afraid they were going to get shot. And that's why they had, the ugly communism and the going to prison for the political dissidents and everything else. The darkest days of Lenin-Stalinist Russia was created by fear. And the same thing is, here, that's why the First Amendment is so important. And Sanders needs to bring this out, that the people need to be yelling and booing. If there's something, and it's a power struggle, really. Another thing, they made a point tonight that the Democrat Party is going to, straighten out and pull together and just be like it did under Obama when it was Obama versus Hillary. And I'm saying it's not quite the same thing because this time it's a power struggle of the 1% versus the 99%. It's a power base, and the 99% is trying to take away the power from the 1%. That is a diametrically opposed view from Hillary Clinton. And the people, when you're fighting over that, it's a lot different than Obama and Hillary. And it's not going to straighten out that quick. And the more Sanders talks, and the more he gets that message out that you've lost your sovereignty, and then that's why you don't have a standard of living that's any good, and basically people are making money by screwing you, essentially. They're not making money the old-fashioned way, earning it. They're making it by screwing you. They're making laws that keep you away from the money. So no matter how hard you work, you can't get it. And it's money really that belongs to you because it has to do with your one man, one vote, and that's how you get the money and your standard of living through the one man, one vote. So it's a power struggle, essentially. And the more people get that, the more there's going to be a rebellion, and it's diametrically opposed from Hillary's view. And so, and if people come to this realization, and enough of them, they aren't going to line behind Hillary. There's no way. There's going to be a fight all the way through it. And if he wins in California, it's going to be worse and worse and worse. And there is no reason. If you look at history, and it's very un-American if they don't yell and boo. And really, they're doing the same thing that happened with the Lenin-Stalinist, the communist ideology, if they're not yelling and booing. And let's see, whether they look bad, they don't make Sanders look that bad, really. And that Sanders needs to bring that out. What's going to make him look bad is if they're not yelling and booing, because then they're pretty much doing the same thing the communists did, and that's un-American. I've always understood communism was un-American, and there's people in the media trying to contradict that. And I think I covered everything I want to on this one. I've repeated a lot of stuff I said earlier, but I don't think I've got drove the point home close enough that Sanders' views probably aren't all that non-capitalist, and they're actually creating more of a capitalist system than we would have if he gets rid of the corruption. And the other thing is that the tallest buildings in the country have to do with the amount of wealth the country has, and the amount of wealth and what stops that is the corruption, and that these companies and that every man, woman, child, and even the 1%, the very richest, are going to profit if we get rid of corruption. Even Warren Buffett even said this to a degree, made this point himself. And he's a lot smarter than these people in Congress and these people and these bankers and everybody a lot of them aren't that brilliant. But anyway, I listen to Warren Buffett, I listen to Bernie Sanders, and Hillary doesn't know crap. I mean, she's not smart enough to be a dog catcher that I can see. She's in the wrong field. And I guess that's about all I got to say.